webinars. SHRM thanks ADP for sponsoring this program and our series of free webinars for the HR community. Before you hear from today's speakers, we want to first provide you with some guidance on using the SHRM webinar interface. In the center of your screen, you should see the title slide for this presentation. To the right of your screen is the speaker chat, where you'll be able to submit questions to our presenters and interact with one another. Likewise, we will have time toward the end of our session for audience Q&A with our presenters, so please send in the questions you have about today's content and presentation. In your session agenda, you can access and download the presentation slides, as well as several other resources our presenters have made available to you. Please click on the Read More tab at the bottom of your window or in your session agenda to access those resources. After this program, you'll receive an email with the SHRM recertification code. Likewise, viewing this full program qualifies for 1 PDC towards SHRM CP or SHRM SCP recertification. You can claim the program for other kinds of HR recertification credit, but you will need to provide the program's details to your certifying body. We only have that pre-approval code for SHRM certification. And now a little about today's program. This webinar will delve into the transformative power and experience of partnering with a professional employer organization or PEO. You will discover how to maximize a PEO partnership, unlock underutilized PEO benefits and their full potential to elevate your HR functions and business, gain valuable insights from industry experts with tips for leveraging PEO services effectively, and hear how to successfully navigate tricky situations with a supportive PEO by your side. We'd also like to introduce you to our presenters today. Greg Usberde is ADP's Vice President of Strategy and Human Resource Outsourcing. He has successfully spent 5 years crafting solutions for hundreds of clients as a strategist, reviewing HR metrics and making data-driven recommendations to address talent challenges. Sandra Adams is ADP's Key Account Executive with over 20 years of experience in account management and human resources, with experience in industries including higher education, hospitality, banking, and finance. She has proven success as a trusted advisor in delivering HR-focused solutions tailored to client needs while fostering strong consultative relationships. With instructions complete, I'm pleased to turn the webinar microphone over to our first presenter, Greg Usberde, to get today's program underway. Greg, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you for having me, SHRM. I appreciate the time and consideration so we can talk through business, especially during some uncertain times that are going on right now. I've actually been with ADP for 15 years, 5 selling PEO, 5 designing solutions for sellers, and now a handful of years actually doing the strategy and back-end work, aligning the products with market needs and demands. When we think about what we're presenting here today, this is not intended to be in any way legal advice, accounting advice. Please consult your own in-house professionals or external professionals when it comes to actioning on the things that you see today. With that little thing and tidbit out of the way, what are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to touch on the trends that are driving HR, because HR really is a reflection of what's going on in the external environments, what's going on from an economic perspective, what's going on in people's lives in America, and what's going on from a geopolitical perspective. We'll make sure everyone's on the same page when it comes to a professional employer organization, and then we'll dive into 3 major areas on how we PEO and how PEO can really unlock some potential for your business. So to get started, I'm Greg Usberde, as I said, and I'm joined by Sandra today. She's the expert actually delivering service, and we'll hear from her for some stories in a little bit. But let's take a look and think about what's actually happening and what's driving our lives as HR people in America. So what were we expecting going into 2025? Well, from an employee perspective, we were seeing cooling labor markets. We were seeing unemployment rate tick up. We were seeing opportunity a little bit decline, a little bit of easing from a pressure perspective. Employees were feeling some limited real wage growth because of inflation. There are generational shifts, with Gen Zs becoming a larger and larger portion of the workforce, and baby boomers aging out. And then there was a high demand for workplace flexibility. We thought the idea of remote work was going to stay the course after the pandemic, and really seeing a drive to return to office. From an economic perspective, We thought inflationary pressures were probably going to continue to ease. We were expecting to see the fund rates go down. We did see increasing housing stock and slowing housing appreciation. So that allowed some more people potentially access to housing. And then from a political standpoint, we were expecting some trade disruption when it comes to tariffs. There was obviously some supply chain disruptions just continuing from the pandemic and that strain. And then there was continued global unrest when we think of the Middle East and Eastern Europe. And then obviously, whenever we have a political change, whenever we have an election year, it always drives a certain amount of uncertainty. So that's what we were expecting. But we actually got a much more action-packed delivery for what's going to happen in 2025. So we see that unemployment rate about where it was prior to the pandemic. So it has ticked up. The labor market has softened. We were spot on that prediction. From an economic standpoint, we have seen inflationary cooling, but it's expected to get worse based on these new trends that are going on from a cost perspective when it comes to consumer goods, which again is driving down real world wages for folks. And then from a political standpoint, when we think about disruption and market uncertainty, you can see an image of the stock market there with declines after Liberation Day, declines after increases in tariffs in China. And then when there's easing in those tariffs, now down to 30%, we see the market recovering. This uncertainty is really driving behaviors from an employee perspective, from a business perspective, ultimately from an investment perspective. And all of a sudden, we need to be more defensive in our decision making, but still think about how we can support our businesses and our employees. So that takes us to our first poll. Which trend do you feel is most impacting your business today? Is it employees? Is it the economy? Is it politics? Or is it all of the above? I know with the businesses that I'm working with, it's primarily the economy. Businesses are concerned about investment. They're concerned about capital expense. They're concerned about labor costs. And really a positive, they're concerned about their employees' well-being. They're concerned about how those employees are going to perceive these changes and manage what's going through their lives. So I'm actually going to click on economy and submit my poll. We're ready to see poll results. That was about 30 seconds. What do we see for the poll results? All of the above. Okay, I chose second choice, the economy. But absolutely, that disruption and that confusion that people are seeing is absolutely 100% driving concerns for businesses. So let's keep going. So it's important to stage. I know we have a mixed audience today. The folks that are probably on a professional employer organization. There's some folks that are probably fully versed on what a PEO is. And there's some folks that may be newer to the concept. So I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes level setting so everyone's on the same page from an educational perspective. So when we think about the traditional employer model, this is really what we're looking at. We're looking at a business with separate siloed data points. We've got payroll, workers' compensation, 401k, Affordable Care Act compliance, and ACA, benefit administration, and actual HR, which we know has gotten only more complex over the years. All of these things are separate and siloed, and your HR professionals, your HR department, your HRIS software is designed to create integrations between them, either manual or through some process of function. When we think of a PEO, the PEO model is unique. It uses a shared liability third-party payer arrangement. It's actually recognized by the IRS to provide a technology and people bridge to best-in-class service providers. So it's very similar to an HRIS system that would be purchased open market, but what's different about a PEO is it supplies a people aspect to it, and then also that third-party payer shared liability perspective to really deliver on consolidating vendors, on streamlining processes, on integrating systems together in a really tight package to make the operations aspect of your business easier. And then it also mitigates risk. That's the baseline when we think about what a PEO should do. But when we really think about unlocking value in the PEO relationships, we really should reframe the conversation around human capital management. That means, how does a PEO optimize my employee productivity? For the HR professionals on the phone, we're thinking about things like employee engagement. we're thinking about things like creating moments that matter in interactions with our employees to drive our brand, to drive our employer value proposition. We're thinking about how we gain a competitive advantage. How can a PEO help me find the right people so I can secure the right customers and win that business? We're thinking about how I can be a first mover in a market and take that advantage by having the right human capital. And then we're thinking about how I enrich the lives of our well-being of our employees. And the pandemic really taught us that employee health, employee well-being, the feelings of our employees was so intimately tied to their performance. When our employees are concerned about their finances, they're distracted at work, they have lower engagement. Where they're concerned about their health, they're distracted at work, they have lower engagement. So when we think about unlocking value, it's about being better for our employees. It's a fundamental aspect. We're going to hear some stories about it today, which is awesome. So how does a PEO fit? Well, it kind of sideloads to a human resource department. It provides human resource specialists, outsourced and extra advice for a company, dedicated payroll support, benefit specialists that are designed to help with enrollment and benefit design, safety and risk specialists to mitigate the exposure of being a business, and then corporate support staff. When we think about PEOs versus a traditional payroll solution, the PEO really has a more intimate relationship with the business, so the support model is more advanced. The resources provided are more advanced. And when we think about our smaller businesses, when we think about economic uncertainty and we think about investment in a period of time where there is a massive amount of uncertainty, who knows in 90 days what's going to happen from a tariff perspective. PEOs really help from a staffing offset perspective, providing a human resource business partner to be that external advice when it comes to making decisions around our employees. Payroll advisors that understand our payroll because they're assigned to us. They're dedicated resources. Risk and safety consultants, different from a workers' comp audit. These folks are designed to help mitigate OSHA compliance issues, that help mitigate a potential accident and that impact that accident has on the workforce. And then benefit specialists. Again, a little bit different when we think about the value of a PEO versus a traditional broker relationship. Traditional broker relationship looks at your employee population, your benefit costs, and ultimately tries to minimize that renewal, minimize the benefit cost to provide the most adequate solution at the right price. When we think about a PEO, and we think about unlocking value of a PEO, that PEO relationship provides a massive amount of resources because it understands your demographics. It understands wages. It understands turnover because it's an HRIS. And that PEO relationship, it's able to make benefit decisions that are ultimately designed to drive the business goals together. And that's really what's essential about a PEO. It's how can it help drive business decisions for your organization. So the PEO industry is gigantic, $414 billion in wages processed in 2023, 208,000 PEO clients. It's actually 17% of all employees from 10 to 99. Almost a fifth of them are on a PEO. And now there's over 500 PEOs in America. So it's experienced a massive amount of growth since the pandemic because of the importance in protecting our employees, in providing for our employees, in providing stability for them in these type of uncertain times, just like during the pandemic. So with that massive amount of PEOs, 500 of them, the question becomes, what should I be looking for in that PEO? And we're going to see some basics here on what you should be looking for, and then we're going to talk to Sandra about some specifics about how we action both proactively and reactively in a real solid PEO relationship. From a financial stability perspective, you're really looking at a PEO from three perspectives. Is a member of the NAPEO, that's the National Association of Professional Employer Organizations. That's our trade group. Is it ESAC accredited? That's actually a nonprofit that provides auditing and support for PEOs to make sure that they are managing their fiduciary responsibilities. And then is it IRS certified? So is it audited and approved by the IRS in that third-party payer relationship to protect some of the relationships from a tax perspective and a grant perspective for the organization? So those are the three major aspects of financial stability you're looking for. And then from a feature set perspective, this is where things get crazy. A PEO does so much. So when we think about it, it's benefit administration. And that's everything from enrollment to benefit support to decision making to invoice reconciliation, moves, adds, and changes, life events. It's payroll and tax management. It's workers' compensation and risk management. And it's not just pay-by-pay workers' comp. It's that ability to look at what the exposure is and provide real support in that relationship to mitigate those impacts. It's HR technology, and that tech should provide the human capital management tools that businesses are looking for now. Think applicant tracking, think performance management, 9-box and succession planning, those type of things. HR support, the realization is for many small businesses, HR wears a lot of hats. They do a lot of things. Everything from ordering the copy paper to handling and taxes and liability issues. Still provides a massive amount of support and resources for a small business to reach out and talk to make sure that they understand what's going on. Talent. It's really easy to provide business insights and analytics. When we think about it, every software platform is going to provide you visibility into your business. The best provide support on how to use those insights, how to turn the information that you have access to, the data and benchmarking that you have access to, into ultimately, that's what we're looking for from a feature set. Now on 80 things. And ultimately, you can ask 3 questions to really simplify a PEO and understand where it is. What does a PEO do to help me with my talent? Attract, engage, retain, and manage my talent. Can it do it in a cost-effective way? Second thing, comp and ben. How can a PEO help me offer a holistic benefit option? Everything from health, dental, vision, life, long-term disability, and then all of the things, reproductive rights, fertility treatments, all of those things fall under comp and ben, and then risk and compliance. How can it do more? How can I unlock value in that relationship by shifting the risk from my 4 walls to a PEO's 4 walls? So those are the 3 areas that we want to think about. And now I'm very excited. We're going to bring Sandra out. And the introduction that we got from Tony, it was like skipping rocks. I'm going to let this slide sit on here for a second before we dive into these things. But you can see her experience is broad and deep. As a key account executive, she actually works with some of the largest clients that ADP has in the HRO space, the human resource outsourcing space, to meet really complex challenges, even with really sophisticated in-house HR teams, managing both reactively and proactively for those businesses. So let's talk about a poll before we talk about talent, our first one. So talent challenges are you most concerned about? Is it a shortage of available talent to hire? Are we still labor constrained? Is it access to skills development for your employees? Is it pushback on remote work? And we see that often, right? We think about Jamie Dimon and Chase and how they're driving in-house, in-office type behaviors. And then it is adapting to a new multi-generational workforce. The realization is we didn't understand Gen Xers. I'm a Gen Xer. We didn't understand millennials. We said they were everything that was a problem. And now we've just forklifted everything from millennials and put them on Gen Zs. So is it dealing with multi-generational workforces? I'm going to go with shortage of talent. Can we see the results, Tony? Shortage of talent. Look, I got one right. And that's absolutely the constraint that we're seeing. Even though unemployment has ticked up, even though people can no longer leave their job to just instantly find more money, we're still seeing a shortage of talent, which is quite interesting. Let's talk about it. Go on to the next slide. There we go. So what are the talent challenges that we're seeing in the market? It's obviously labor shortages. Learning and development has become so important. The realization is employees will stay at a job that they don't like if there's opportunity for them to learn. There's that new collar workforce. Those are folks that go to tier technical schools. Those are your data scientists, computer security, those are your electricians and trade folks. They're becoming very popular occupations for Gen Zs. And then we're seeing really a return to office mandates not pan out the way businesses thought they were going to. So with that being said, Sandra, are you out there?
I am doing good. Thank you for having me. And I'm seeing some familiar names already on the chat. So glad that I'm here. And
Really?
happy PEO weeks for those folks who are celebrating alongside with me.
So I celebrate every PEO week. I go to have margaritas every night, get tacos. So let's talk about the demographics. Let's talk about these kind of challenges that businesses have, and we can see the demographics in front of you. But tell me about an opportunity where you've gotten some more value out of the PEO relationship that's beyond just simply retaining. Tell me a story about when things went in a different direction.
Oh, well, great. Well, to start, just to show you pretty much what we have on the screen, this is what we use in terms of like getting data from the clients. You can just see obviously the numbers, but data won't mean anything unless you're actually interpreting the results. There's times obviously that things don't go our way, or we were not able to see the data right there, and that's when we have to talk to the clients about that.
So what happened? When we were talking about this, there was a manufacturing company you were working with?
Yes, about 300 employees. They have employees sitting in California as well as in Texas. So pretty complex, okay. Especially with the California law.
And what was their talent challenge?
Well, the talent challenge, we have a recruiter pretty much that started 3 months before that conversation we had. She called me, I think it was like week right there before Christmas Eve. She called me and she said, I am just receiving notification from the CEO that we have to create a reduction in force for 40 people. Part of the HR team is included. So what do I do?
Okay, so not what you'd expect from a talent challenge, right? Most people are struggling to find people. This is a reduction in force. So talk to me about this interaction, because you as a key account executive are engaged at the HR level and they're going through a reduction in force, but also at the executive level. So how did this all play out?
Well, in this case with her, just pretty much, I just listened to her. Like I said, I just put myself in her shoes. If you were hired 3 months ago, and all of a sudden the CEO is just talking to you, letting you know there's 40 people that you have to let go. Part of that is going to be your team. I just can't imagine what was going through her head, in terms of like the complexity of the process, communicating this information to the employees, the timeline that we have, because we're talking about this was the week before December. The reduction in force is supposed to be performed in January. And we're having this conversation. Most of the people are already out on vacation, and she is, her head is full with all this information that we need to do. She never went through a reduction in force before, especially this magnitude of 40 people. So definitely there was a lot of desperation. So I empathize with her, just listen to her and ask her what the situation was. Just ask her, what happened, just to kind of understand where the reasoning behind the CEO was to make the decision so sudden in this specific month in December.
So that's the human-centric HR aspect, the fact that you're empathizing with the HR department, you're trying to understand what the events were that led to this reduction in force. So how did you action it? How did you take what was going on, turn it into a tactical action plan to actually resolve these issues?
Well, we actually have a quick turnaround time, and obviously I have some people already out in vacation because, like I said, it was just December. I talked to her and I'll let her know, pretty much everything will be okay. We will walk through it. We will let her know. We do have the tools pretty much in the system to provide a checklist for her, just to go step by step how she needs to do on the reduction in force. We also have templates in order for us to collect information, because we need to know the employees that she is, the part of the reduction in force, situations behind it. There's some people in leave and things like that, because that obviously make the situation more complex. How many of them were in California, or how many of them were in Texas? Because also, again, like I mentioned at the beginning of the story, when we're talking about California, state laws are completely different. So when you're terminating an employee, we have to pay them immediately. So that means in my head, I already have to involve payroll in that process and just kind of be all hands on deck when it comes to the service team, just to make sure that we wrapped around her, our arms around her, and just solve the situation on a timely manner.
So that's an interesting thing you brought up, right? Obviously, the compliance aspect has changed as businesses have become more multi-state. If this company wasn't in a PEO relationship, right? If they didn't have you to call to help action this whole reduction in force, what would be the normal steps to deal with from that compliance perspective? What would they have to do to address all these multi-state issues or termination issues they would have?
I can even imagine. I can tell you that a lot of the information you will have to, depend. Shrimp, if you're obviously a member, you will be able to have access to that, but you will have to pull out information one by one and just make sure you gather all the details you have in order to perform a reduction in force. Also, be very familiar with everything that has to do with the state. I have to go through that a few years ago, and it was tough. I did have a team with me just to kind of walk through it, but there's a lot of secrecy behind a reduction in force, because especially in her case, some of her peers were involved in that reduction in force. We need to make sure we were very confidential with the information, how we were handling that reduction in force, to make sure that everything was done by the book and provide the support needed. But definitely will take a lot more steps, a lot more research, a lot more of trying to find the resources you need in order to perform a reduction in force like that.
So where's this organization? Are they still here on a PEO? What's going on?
Yes, they're still with us. They're still with us. I'm happy to say that they still, with the ADP and PEO aspect of it. We were able, after that situation, after that crisis, build even more trust with her. She obviously understood what we were going through. Obviously, we performed, like I said, the information we provided for her, the timeliness of things, the professionalism we have, not only on my end, but also the service team were helping with. Alongside with me, payroll as well as the HRBPs, just make sure that we have this done properly, the letters that we needed to send out, and all of that was done in a timely manner. So right as of now, I can happily say that they're still with us and they're still part of our organization.
So that's really what we think about when we think about real value in a PEO relationship. It's not just about a talent tool set. It's not just about a dashboard. I mean, there's a screenshot of a dashboard from ADP. But I'll be honest, every PEO has some form of analytics dashboard insights that they're going to provide their customers. The realization is the advantage. The way you get real value out of a PEO relationship is relying on the Sanders of the world to help figure out how to action that, to understand what the exposure is when these type of events happen, and to provide both proactive and reactive support to an organization. That's really the value of a PEO. So we're going to go right back to Sandra in a second, but we've got another poll. Do folks on the phone find it difficult to keep up with changing compliance regulations? I know, and I'm a dork. I read HR. I probably, I'm in good company, right? There's a state that actually is rolling back the state legislation. I want to say Missouri. I could be wrong. I've just read it this morning. That's rolling back the paid sick leave that they just passed through voter referendum. 59% of the folks in the vote agreed to paid sick leave, and then the state legislation is actually rolling it back. So employees in the state had paid sick leave that you needed to have managed for about 4 months, from the beginning of 2025 to the middle of 2025. So they changed that fast. Can we see the poll results? There we go. So yes, everyone, I'm in good company. Everyone is dealing with these types of challenges, and they are crazy. They change fast. So let's just understand how fast. And look, I always like to give people a resource, right? It's always great to attend a webinar, but I like to be able to give people a little leave behind, some little amuse-bouche nugget to keep. So from a compliance perspective, what are we looking out for in 2025? Obviously, EOC and FLSA changes are rampant. If you're not aware of that, you probably got into this call by accident and you really don't want to be dealing with HR. OSHA changes are happening. Obviously, changes in administration, change OSHA guidance. 1099 is not a settled science. It's always changing. And then state changes are really where it's at, right? The pandemic drove multi-state hiring. We just talked about a business that's in multi-state. But state changes have really gone crazy. I've been voting since I was 18, since I was old enough to vote. And I don't remember when I was young voting on ballot initiatives. But in the last election cycle, there were 153 of them, and 20 states and 43 jurisdictions increased the minimum wage. There are ones around sick leave. There are ones around marijuana use. There is a massive amount of fluctuation when it comes to state compliance concerns. So when you get this deck, there's a link here to an interactive minimum wage tracker. You can click on it and click on the state, and it'll actually tell you what the minimum wage in the state is, and then the framework around minimum wage increases if there is one. For example, Florida has a minimum wage that increases every year. So things like that are important to get a handle on, and it's a great thing to just bookmark and save. But I want to talk about PEOs and compliance, and I want to go back to Sandra because no one cares what I think, right? We really care what the person thinks, right? So multi-state compliance, obviously a crazy issue. Wage and hour, a crazy issue. Talk to us. Have you had some clients that have had these challenges?
Yes, all the time. And just to explain pretty much what you will see on the screen is just, again, part of the tools that I use in order to get information. It can be, similar to other people that will have PEOs out there, but this is just to indicate if someone is out of compliance, and how do we just partner with the employer in this case to provide our consult with them just to see what's going on with the account.
Okay. So talk to me about the group. What were the challenges they were experiencing as a multi-state organization from a compliance perspective?
Well, this is my hospitality folks. I don't know if they're out there, but this was actually a hotel in Florida. In the compliance was, well, you have obviously your salary employees in this case. You also have your hourly rate, but you also have your tip employees, which are bartenders, your servers out there, which is just a little different than your normal hourly rate. When state like that change the policies, then definitely you need to catch up with that, because that means, like, for example, Arizona a few years back decided to roll out a state ballot when they have to increase the hourly rate for 4 years straight. So on those things that we need to just make sure that we are on top of the employees, just make sure that we look at the compliance, just make sure that we are identifying those folks first. Who are the individuals who's going to be impacted? Have that conversation about the budget. Did you have anything, in mind? Because this is just not going to be for the now, but also for the future. And just make sure that, you're just consulting with them, you're talking to them through the process as you identify these employees and the situation at hand.
So this hotel, hospitality, restaurant, seasonal, right, because you're in Florida.
Yes.
What were their other concerns? So obviously wages, FLSA is a concern, Fair Labor Standardization Act. What was the other thing that was concerning them from a benefit perspective?
Yes, that's a great point, Greg, because in situations like this happen, we need to make sure that those tip employees, if they're meeting the requirement, that means that this employee will become eligible to be part of benefits for the following year. So in that case, we need to make sure that we monitor them closely, the hours that they're working, the amount of money that they're making towards the end of the year, so we can have that conversation at the end of the year. Because once that measurement period is over, then definitely we need to count these folks to offer benefits and also make sure that they're affordable for them. So that comes another complex conversation with them in terms of affordability when it comes to the benefit strategy, which we will talk. That's a different conversation, but definitely part of that, making sure that these employees are accounted for when that measurement period is over.
So in the first story that we talked about, it was all about being reactive. They had a big reduction in force. You had to action it. This is definitely more of a proactive support model here. Talk to me about what the action plan was, how they came up with the budget. What was your interactions with both HR and executive team?
Yes, great question. So in the case, pretty much what we can identify who are the employees that are at risk. In this case, we have a conversation, we can pull them out, we can talk about them. Then, like I said, we just want to make sure that how that measurement period is going to end. We partner with people. Obviously, our service is it's pretty robust in that regard, and we do have ACA compliance consultants that can actually help a part of that conversation. Just make sure that we are complying with that measurement period. Once that it's over, then we just have a conversation about compensation as well. Because again, if the state ballot, just have an hourly rate, we need to start increasing the hourly rates for these folks. What's going to happen with the ones that are already in the organization? Those ones also, we need to make sure that we are creating a plan for them, a compensation plan for them, not for now, like I said, but then for years to come, and making sure that we are doing right by the ones that are impacted immediately by the state laws, but also doing right by the ones that are already being with the organization. And then now, everybody is catching up with their hourly compensation.
So it's something really interesting that you brought up there, and I'd like you to elaborate on a little bit. So when we think about a population of lower wage employees, right? Let's say the minimum wage is $15. You've got some employees that are probably at 17 or 18, and you're hiring new employees at 15. Every year, those new employees tick up from a minimum wage perspective. So you're really saying that proactively, you should be looking at the person at 17 or 18 and start figuring out where to budget them, knowing that the floor is increasing every year. So it's really a retention conversation that you're having.
Retention and budget, and also a compensation plan, because definitely we need to make sure that we have a scale of how are we going to move these employees moving forward. So if there's going to be some sort of scale based on the skills, based on the time that they're being with the organization, those are things that need to come out in the conversation. Also, if we have other states involved, because usually when you have state laws like this, it's roll out once, and then the following election year, then it's just going to be the same thing. Another state is going to pop out. So you want to make sure that you're keeping up with the trends and having this conversation to make the client comfortable with that space, and making sure that we're budgeting for that compensation increase as they come along based on elections.
So this is really interesting when we think about finding value in a PEO. I actually worked with a prospect that was hiring drivers. They were hiring them basically at $17 an hour. And we did an analysis of their data, and we saw that just $1 an hour increase in their wages increased their tenure by almost a year and a half versus about 6 months at that $17 price point or salary hour. So when we think about how PEOs help, right, these type of dashboards and analytics pages, these kind of tools built around FLSA really help a business not just mitigate the risk of the compliance, right? Am I violating a minimum wage law? Am I violating an overtime law? Or am I paying my servers right when they're not doing server work? It's really about how do I retain my talent for longer, because that retained talent is better talent. It lowers our risk, right? And the other important thing to note, right, and this is so important, I don't want to marginalize the advantage of Sandra, is that in a PEO model, when we think about the value of a PEO, there's support for decision making, and then oftentimes with a PEO, there's an employer practice liability insurance bundled in to provide some additional support when it comes to things like a RIF, a reduction in force, or comes to things like a termination or performance plan. So there's some extra resources there. And as we can see, PEOs can be really reactive, right? And they can be really active and proactive in this case in designing the solution. And the benefits for this, right? When we think about it, you were really talking about healthcare benefits, right? Give me a teaser. Low-wage employees, what else would you do from a benefit perspective to drive engagement in a lower wage population of employees?
That's a great question, especially when it comes to benefits. That's definitely a strategy conversation that we have to have with our clients, just to make sure that, sometimes the client had a budget, and then that's fine. We want to see the business side of it, and we want to consider that. They have a budget, they have a budget. But like you just mentioned, you have a type, employees that are on a lower spectrum when it comes to hourly rate. And we need to take them into consideration when we are selecting benefits. And in those cases, we use this type of data just to identify those employees that are on that lower spectrum and make sure that we adjusting contributions and provide examples or provide solutions for the client, just to let them know, hey, well, this is pretty much a contribution you have. We can reduce the contribution in this specific plan and add it to this specific plan, just to make sure that those hourly rate employees are able to afford your plans We can also make changes on the plan design, and we can provide recommendations to the client on making changes on that plan design, just to ensure, again, that those folks are able to afford the plan. And it's just part of a whole, like, again, a strategy and a whole conversation, just to go back and forth, respecting that budget that the client had, but also looking for alternatives, just to make sure that they remain compliant with the organization, obviously, and with the law.
So a lot of compliance, a lot of proactive, and that's really important to have that strong relationship with a PEO. That's where you find value. It's not just Sandra's not talking about a discount on benefits. She's not talking about a discount on workers' comp. She's talking about the support that we give, or PEO gives, to provide a better work experience, a better management and administrative experience, but a better employee experience too. So we got time for another poll. So what do your employees report wanting most from their employer? Is it health and wellness benefits? Is it voluntary benefits like pet and fertility coverage? I feel like those probably should be bundled separately. I feel like fertility is more important than pet, but I have two.
It depends on who you ask.
Two cats, that's the plan. 401k or all of the above. So what are we thinking? And 401k, I'm gonna put in parentheses there and say, yeah, financial wellness. I'm gonna put 401k financial wellness in there. So we'll give it a couple seconds, and then we'll take a look at the results as soon as Tony hits the next button for us. Tells us what's going on. What are the results? Health and wellness. Okay, health and wellness, all of the above. So really, it is the core competencies, right? It's medical, dental, vision, it's EAPs, mental health. It's all of that stuff. That's got to be checked first, and then it's everything else, right? Like, it's not pet insurance by itself. It's pet insurance with fertility. It's with everything else bundled in. So let's talk about comp and ben, and we'll bring Sandra out in just a second. She didn't really go anywhere. She's right there. So when it comes to comp and ben trends, we were right on. The poll was spot on, right? Holistic wellness, thinking about more than just healthcare, but really expanding the scope of benefits. And again, a lot of that is driven by the pandemic. All of a sudden, people needed critical care. All of a sudden, people thought about long-term and short-term disability in a much more meaningful way than they had previously. It's about broad benefits. How many of these things, these benefits, can I tack on to ultimately act as a hook to retain my employees, right? If I just take health, it's easier for me to leave and find health somewhere else. But if I take a holistic benefit position and I have access to earned wages, I have health, I have mental health, I have EAP, I have support infrastructure, it's harder for me to leave and find as comprehensive a benefit package. And then it's financial wellness. The reality is that the dream of American homeownership is very different depending on what demographic data you fall into, what bucket, if you're a baby boomer or Gen Xer versus a Gen Z or a millennial. So that financial wellness is so important to think about when we think about college debt, when we think about concerns employees have, when we think about uncertainty from a purchasing power perspective. It's really a powerful thing to think about. So where does ADP fall in this? Well, look, we like research. We joke that the D is for data. At the end of the day, we have a pretty broad employee survey that we do for our customers to understand where they are from a data perspective. So what are the key findings? Compensation matters the most. So when we think about benefits, we have to get the pay right first. We have to be competitive in the salaries that we offer people, because the realization is you can't pay rent, you can't pay your mortgage with a great vision benefit. You can't trade in your pet wellness to be able to make your credit card payment. Compensation's got to be good. 401k is more important than ever. The realization is this is the savings vehicle that most Americans are going to have to rely on. We think about changes to Social Security. People, as soon as we hear talks about Social Security, people think 401k has become much more important. They're making hard choices. Employees are making hard decisions on what healthcare expenses they're willing to make. So that means driving people to lower cost solutions. That means more preventative care. That means making tough decisions on what coverage I take, whether I put my spouse on it or whether she gets her own coverage. And then employees want customized solutions. Demographics are so important when we think about our decision-making processes as an HR person, as a business leader, as an executive. Understanding where we are from a salary standpoint, a geographic perspective, and even a generational perspective. Understand those demographics help us drive decision making. And then there's confidence in health benefit decision tools. So this is an important one when we think about PEOs and relationships and unlocking value. It's really important to understand that people like to buy and engage products in a different way. My wife will buy something and never return it because it means going back to the store and talking to someone, and she hasn't ordered food outside of a digital environment probably the last 7 years. The reality is that when we come to benefit enrollment and benefit decision making, support structures need to be varied for those employees to ultimately give them the access to the tools and the way they like to come to decisions that's bespoke to them. So Sandra, with that being said, let's talk a little bit about some comp and ben challenges that you've experienced.
Yes. Well, to show pretty much the slide deck, what you will see just pretty much obviously the entire nation. But this is one of the tools that we use in order to find, how their states are doing, down to counties, down to cities, just to make sure that we have the right information. We can do comparables. I will lean in onto higher education. They're always been dear and near to my heart. And I did have the pleasure to work with one on the South market with 150 employees, just to work with a compensation project that we have a few months back.
So talk to me about this compensation project. So you've got higher ed organization, right? Over 100 employees that you're just doing a compensation benchmark for. Give me the framework. What was going on?
Well, I have to lean in on my Six Sigma for this one, but because pretty much we have someone that was not related to HR that pretty much started hiring people into the organization, but there was no background. There were just nothing to base the salary on. So you might have two people in the same position, two directors, and maybe have $50,000 different between one and the other. They were not considering skills or education or experience in that regard. So as you can see, just pretty problematic. That definitely will bring some compensation disparities into the organization.
So help me understand this. So the first example, we were reactive. Second one, we're proactive, right? We're trying to address a problem. And here we're really being strategic. What was the goal? What were we trying to get to from an endpoint? And what would it mean to the organization when you got there?
Perfect. Yes. Well, we pretty much the goal was just to make sure that we have some sort of base to establish the compensation. So what will be a guidance, or what will be our way to moving forward to every time that we're hiring or posting a position out there, we have the right compensation, that it's according to market as well, because you want to make sure that they're attractive to your organization and you're competitive, with your county, with your city, whatever you are, you want to make sure that you're competitive in that aspect. And you want to make sure the job description is actually accurate. You want to make sure that the information that you have in front of you, it is comparable to what it's out there. So if it's a unicorn, then that's it. We'll treat it as a unicorn. But if it's just pretty much what it's out there in the market, then we want to make sure that the skill set as well as the information in terms of education and experience, it is according to what the market is asking for.
So talk to me about that. You mentioned something that comes across my desk all the time, is this concept of role creep in a position where responsibilities increase, job duties increase. Talk to me about how, as an HR business partner, you have to address role creep in this organization and the disparities of job titles versus what they did and their salaries.
Yes. So in this case, what we do is just sit down and then just kind of take a look at the organization as a whole. And we actually it took us, like I said, a few months in sitting down with them, just comparing the organization, comparing the to other, higher education institutions around the area, also outside of the state, and pretty much, just to see what they were doing. So we did a little bit of research on that regard. The second part was just to make sure that the job descriptions that they have, these people that they were hired into an accurate space, If they weren't, then definitely that's some digging that we need to do and just make sure that we are putting the position in the right spot in the right place. So that means the job description needs to be comparable. And the last step that we have is just to make sure that we have a career path for this individual. So, okay, so if I started at entry level, how things are going to look forward once we're moving into a mid-level career, or I'm already at the end of it, then how much is that going to look in terms of compensation? What do I need to have in order to have, the compensation that I'm looking for? And that pretty much, like I said, it took us a little bit of the research component as well as creating a career path for this individual and the comparison aspect of the job description, just to make sure that we have accuracy on it, just to help those individuals, as you mentioned, that they are, acquiring the responsibilities, but maybe the education, the skill set is not there. What do we need to do in order for them to move to the next level to get the compensation they're looking for?
So that's the compensation side of things. Obviously, we've got to be competitive. Almost every PEO, I can't imagine a PEO nowadays, doesn't provide some amount of analytics information around compensation from a benchmarking perspective, either from their own data set or purchased from a third party. The realization is this is going to provide a good framework from the compensation perspective. But talk to me about the benefits. Talk to me about total compensation tools, because that's a big thing PEOs talk about, total compensation packages. What's that tool mean? How is it helping from a relationship perspective?
So in that regards, we just go back to some of those other conversations that we have and some of the examples also that I provided before. One of the aspects is the compliance. Sometimes, like we have, again, we have an employer just pretty much like, this is the budget I have, this is all I can do. And we understand that, but then when you talk about compensation, it's just not the pay component. What else are we offering in the organization? What else is out there in terms of benefits that we can make sure they are affordable, they are just inclusive for those employees that are on the hourly rate on the bottom part. So we make sure that we have these strategy conversations when we're talking to them, the aspect of having a PEO, will pretty much, there's a whole package. You have the compensation side, you have the benefit side, but there is also another set of benefits that you receive to educate your employees, to offer other type of voluntary benefits like life, insurance, legal, things of that sort. Short-term disability, long-term disability, that's part of the conversation. And we just want to make sure that budgeting for that, and we just put it in right there on the forefront for the employees to see as part of what we're selling the organization, we're selling the full package, the compensation and the benefits as well.
So let me play devil's advocate for a second. So why can't a business just do this all themselves? Like, why can't, I'm in a sharp HR person, why don't I just source it all myself?
You can, there's people that will go out there and just wing it. The problem is when you don't have like the tool or the consultation or the HR person at the table, then that opens the door for a lot of compensations discrepancies. Like I mentioned, like we have in this specific organization, we have like someone that was not related to HR and just decided to hire people and then just put a compensation on their forehead, based on nothing, because there was nothing at the time, which makes it problematic. We want to make sure that you're in compliance, that you are following the law, and you're not discriminating anybody or just making just disparities in terms of the compensation or the benefit for that matter. Everything needs to be equitable for the people that you're serving, and that actually makes you an employee of choice versus someone that is just trying to do it on their own.
So from your experience, right, obviously this is an organization that was really intentional with their benefits, with their compensation. They were thinking through how to bring parity or equity across a group of different employees. What's the payoff for this organization when they're intentional like that, when they actually focus on the strategy?
Well, now they have a career path, which they didn't have before. Now they have a cleaner job descriptions. They know what to go, where to do when they're posting a position. It makes their life a lot easier. Everything is a lot faster because they already hire for that position. They already know what they're looking for. And also when they're selling the organization and when they're talking about total rewards, the compensation and the benefits, we have the compensation, but we have the benefits, but we also have a career path for you. So just because you're coming in entry level doesn't mean it stays there. As you progress with your education, your experience in the organization, also your skill sets grow, then definitely there's more opportunity for you to have increases in the future. Also allows the business to catch up in terms of budget, because definitely all of this is just, it doesn't come out of the blue. We also have to have a consultation with the organization just to make sure they have the budget to comply with these increments in salary and as the people move forward within the organization.
Sandra, it's all about consultation. It's all about planning and that relationship. Appreciate your help with everything and sharing your expertise. I'm going to turn it to Tony to do some Q&A.
Greg, thank you so much. Before we turn to audience questions, we have some announcements to share with you, including information regarding the SHRM PDC you've earned for viewing today's program. First, SHRM thanks ADP for sponsoring this program and SHRM's series of free webinars. The impact of your work is essential to your organization, and that is why ADP wants you to stay ahead of whatever comes next. With over 75 years of experience and thousands of HR experts, you get a team of professionals to turn to and help you accomplish your goals. Whether it's HR administration, best-in-class benefits, payroll and taxes, compliance, or attracting and retaining top talent, ADP's PEO, ADP Total Source, is your full-service HR partner and there to help you with all of your HR needs. To learn more about ADP Total Source and how it can help your company be ready for the next anything, visit adptotalsource.com. Next, we want to provide you with information regarding the SHRM PDC you've earned for viewing today's program. You can claim your credit by entering the number you see on your screen. You'll also receive a post-event email with this code. Regardless of the type of recertification you are pursuing, please keep track of the SHRM webinars you may be claiming for credit. And now with that, let's turn to questions that have been coming in from our audience. And we'll begin here. Do PEOs provide EEOC 1 mandated reporting?
So it's really a two-part answer. So the framework of a PEO will provide and collect all of the data from an EEOC perspective to actually create the reports. But under recent changes to that law, the EEOC reporting needs to be handled by the actual employer, not the PEO, not the third-party payer. So you'll still need to file the report, but PEOs will give you the framework to build that report out, and then the support you need. You reach out to a Sandra, hey, I have to do my EEO filing, and they can help make sure that you have all the reporting in order. So, yes.
Thanks for that great answer, Greg. Another member of our audience asks, does a PEO become the employer of record? Are employees technically employees of the PEO?
So it's a third-party payer arrangement. So when we think about IRS certification, the IRS doesn't really recognize co-employment as a relationship. The IRS understands that the PEO doesn't actually have the real employees. They're not telling people what to do every day. Sandra's not going into that university and telling what class someone should teach. The IRS recognizes that the co-employed employees are still under control of the organization. The PEO is acting as a third-party payer. So the PEO relationship uses the tax ID of the PEO to pay your employees from a tax-based perspective. It's very important to understand there's a fundamental difference between a PEO and a leasing company. So the relationship with the employee on a PEO ends when the employer ends that relationship. So if I'm on a PEO and Sandra's my employee and we terminate Sandra, the relationship between Sandra and the PEO all end. That was my cat knocking something over. I apologize. In a leasing arrangement and employee leasing, I still have a relationship with Sandra as the leasing company, and now I will staff Sandra at a competitor of that company. I will use Sandra for an employee anywhere. In a PEO relationship, that severs once the relationship with the employer severs. So shared liability, they're not actually our employees. The IRS recognizes that.
Thank you, Greg. Let's see if we can squeeze in one last question. Can ADP help an employer with only 5 full-time employees access competitive benefits?
So we have a product called a Total Source Prime. It's actually for smaller businesses. So at the end of the day, a PEO mechanism, we didn't really want to spend a lot of time on PEO 101. PEOs do have an underwriting model. So we look at enrollment, we look at salary information, organizational credit, risk and safety concerns. But at a 5-employee business, certainly it's a good time to start thinking about PEO as you grow. And every client is unique. Every opportunity to interact with a PEO is unique. I can't guarantee that we could work with a 5-person business to give them benefits, but it's certainly something that we would entertain and evaluate on a case-by-case basis from a PEO standpoint.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you, Sandra. Our program will be coming to a close shortly, but please stay with us for a couple of closing announcements. We'll be closing the program window in the next 40-ish seconds. You have that time to take down the SHRM activity code for your PDC or access any of the program resources from your program agenda below. In a post-webinar email, you'll receive the post-webinar survey as well as this SHRM recertification code. We hope you'll take a few moments to fill out the survey. It helps us assess this event and plan for future ones. Before we sign off, we want to thank our presenters, Greg Usberty and Sandra Adams, for all the actionable information and thought leadership they've shared today. Finally, we want to thank you, our audience, for tuning in and for choosing SHRM for HR webinars. That concludes today's program.